one day somebody does something unspeakable to someone else, to someone you hardly knew, and you do something about it, because you can.
This story comes to us from the New York Times. A former police officer who was beaten by other officers while working undercover during a protest against police violence in a 2017 St. Louis protest was awarded $23 million by a Missouri judge. Now, Luther Hall, the former officer, won the default judgment against one of his former colleagues after the defendant failed to respond to a lawsuit over the 2017 attack, according to court records. Now, the quote from the judge here is, Mr. Hall had to endure this severe beating, and while that was happening, he knew it was being administered by his colleagues who were sworn to serve and protect, says Judge Joseph White of the St. Louis Circuit Court. And he said that at the hearing, according to KSDK, a local news station. Now, Mr. Hall, who was black, was attacked during a protest in September of 2017 that was organized in response to the acquittal of Jason Stockley, a white police officer who killed a 24-year-old black man, Anthony Lamar Smith, after a high-speed chase in 2011. The officers accused in the beating are white. And there are going to be some people who go, oh, they're bringing race into it. Here we go. It's in our face. I'm not bringing anything. It's the elephant in the room. It's there. So this white officer kills this black man in 2011, Lamar Smith. 6 years later, in 2017, he's acquitted, and they have a protest. I guess it's probably something similar to the Rodney King. Remember the acquittal of the police officers there. And then 7 years later, this officer who claims he was beaten while undercover, he was beaten by his colleagues, he gets $23 million over it. So you see how something happens in 2011, boom, it sparks. It's just that flame that keeps going. Like sometimes that's how easy it is to spark something that just goes for years. So, 13 years later, still talking about what happened in 2011. I digress. The acquittal led to days of demonstrations in downtown St. Louis, during which police officers used tear gas and pepper balls against protesters who were lobbing bricks and bottles at them. In an interview, Mr. Hall, the former officer, said that he was embedded among the protesters and recording video on his cell phone to capture any illegal activity. The footage was transmitted in real time to a control room, which he later learned was not manned. Wow, he's doing all this work and they're not even... When a police officer ordered Mr. Hall to the ground, he began to comply, lifting his hands, but he was forcefully thrown to the ground twice, kicked, and hit by fists and police batons all over his body, according to the judgment. During the 2017 protest, the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department lauded its officers on social media for showing great restraint. While on September 17th of 2017, the night of Mr. Hall's assault by his colleagues, the acting police chief, Lawrence O'Toole, told reporters the city was safe and the police had owned the night. We owned them, baby. The city of St. Louis settled a class action lawsuit last August, agreeing to pay $5 million to protesters who said they were beaten by police officers during the demonstrations after Mr. Stockley's acquittal. Now, the assault left Mr. Hall with a concussion, injuries to his head and body, post-traumatic stress disorder. Too disabled to work, Mr. Hall retired early after a 22-year career with the St. Louis Police Department. That's why he retired. He didn't retire because, he's like, I'm retiring because I just can't work anymore. I'm not because his buddies beat him. I don't know. Maybe I'm being facetious. But he attributed the judgment to his status as a former police officer and the footage of the assault that he captured on his cell phone. Mr. Hall was quoted as saying, officers aren't held accountable. What made a difference in my case is I was a police officer and I was able to record everything that happened. Did you hear that? I was able to record everything that happened. Say it again. Hall said he was able to record everything that happened. Now, there's some information here where it says Judge White issued a default judgment against one of the officers involved in the attack, Randy Hayes, who was among 3 officers prosecuted in a federal case filed in 2018, a year after the acquittal of Stockley. Judge White noted in his decision that after Mr. Hall was assaulted, Mr. Hayes had sent a text message to another officer saying that if the beating had been of a protester rather than a police officer, it wouldn't be a problem at all. The judge said that Mr. Hayes' speech and actions showed complete indifference to an individual he believed to be an unarmed African American doing nothing wrong. Mr. Hayes pleaded guilty in 2019 to a felony account of deprivation of civil rights. He was served with Mr. Hall's lawsuit in prison, but he never responded. He's probably the one that caused the big thing. So Mr. Hall previously won a $5 million settlement in a civil case against the city of St. Louis. He also settled a lawsuit against a 4th officer, Bailey Coletta, for an undisclosed sum, according to his lawyer, Lynette Petruska. And then it goes, and it's going to give you some more information about sentencing of Miss Coletta and some probation and so forth. It goes down from there. I'll put a link to it in the description box. It's a little bit longer. But the gist of the story here is we got this cop. I mean, not even a cop. Let's just say we got a guy who was beaten by these guys. He had his hands up, thrown down, kicked, and whatnot. And one of the officers says, if he wasn't a cop, if he was just a dude in the street, we wouldn't be talking about this. Which tells you that cops don't care about who they beat, who they violate the civil rights of, who they use excessive force on. They don't really care if it's not a police officer. Well, it wasn't a cop. Well, if it wasn't a cop, we wouldn't be talking about it. It was a cop, but not only that, it was a man, a human who was trying to comply, and you guys beat the hell out of him. And now the taxpayers are going to pay the $23 million plus the $5 million that he previously won. So almost $30 million this guy's getting because you guys couldn't control yourselves. Well, you know, it happens. It's this, and it's a big protest, and people are throwing rocks and bottles. It just pisses me off, especially after reading that one cop saying, well, if it wasn't a police officer. See? So all of you people that are not police officers, all you civilians, that's what they think about you.